deal was in reach, and a failure to do so would be a failure of statecraft as well. Isn't it a failure of statecraft to offer to send out gunboats to protect our fish? I'm quite appalled almost by those comments from the Foreign Secretary and others in government.
It's a bit strange to be talking about sending out the Navy to protect fisheries, not least because actually the fisheries in English waters, contrast Scotland, have always been looked after by the Royal Navy. So in some respects, there's nothing new there. Fisheries protection is done by the Navy, but the way it was briefed out was clearly quite bellicose in a slightly surprising way if you're trying to get a deal sorted out, a deal where the big problem is lack of trust. And to start briefing that sort of thing seems a bit maladroit at best.
Yeah, it was more Lord Salisbury in circa 1890 than 2020. But let's move on as well. Look, there's some very good comments, I thought, from Simon Coveney last week, who was echoing what the Taoiseach was saying about let's just get this done, we're almost there, and saying that too many of the parties look like they're worried about choreography rather than the substance of a deal. Would you echo that?
Yes, to an extent. I think when people say that 95–97% of this is done, what they're talking about is all the other dimensions of this relationship. It's on trade, but it's also internal security, energy markets, all sorts of other things. But the big problem still remains these points of principle. And that's why this is proving so difficult. It's not just a question of tidying up a few details. They're still talking about a big gap on points of principle. And so the real question today, in my mind, is have they found something there that to get around these big issues of principle? Or is it just that neither side wants to be the one that walks away from the table? That seems to me the big issue today, and we maybe won't know the answer to that for a day or two yet.
Philip, a lot of mixed messages over the weekend about just how ready Britain is for Brexit, with or without a deal, and suggestions the government may be fast-tracking some measures to get perishable food to the UK, also concerns about some of the queues that may be banking up with some of the lorries. What do you make of the readiness here, and will there be supply shortages?
Well, the readiness question, again, is a fascinating one. The Prime Minister saying to businesses, oh, you must now get ready for no deal. We're like a couple of weeks away. People have been working on this, including a lot of businesses, for a very, very long time now. We've always known, we've known for weeks that a lot of businesses haven't completed their preparations. There's no way that they can do that now in the time remaining, but that applies in a deal or a no deal context. So there's always been this risk of short-term disruption at the border come the 1st of January, because one way or the other, there is a really huge change in our trading relationship with the EU, all sorts of new processes kicking in on the border at the beginning of next year. So that risk of short-term disruption has always been there. And what you're hearing from the government now is aspects of the planning that have been in the works for actually a couple of years now, because we were thinking about this in the run-up to March 2019. Now, one hopes that all the government plans are a lot more advanced than they were then, but this is now coming to the crunch point.
Philip, as we talk about short-term disruption, then this is clearly not a normal year and nobody wants to panic anyone. But what type of scenario are we looking at when you've got people already in their homes hoarding food, concerned about what's playing out with the pandemic? You add on top of that any short-term disruption to products. Could it be a massive problem that we're witnessing unfold here?
You've seen some of the leaks last week about the government's contingency planning. The Prime Minister set up a new unit in Number 10 to cope with this in case there is a sort of conflation of different issues, pandemic, Brexit, flooding and all the rest of it. The government obviously has thought through this and thought very hard about how to manage all of this. But the National Audit Office saying the other day that there's a risk that the flow of traffic across the Calais-Dover crossing could drop to about 60% of normal flows. So the risk is there that there will be short-term disruption, and everybody, I think, recognises that that would have an impact on the supply of some foods to the shops. The talk was around particularly fresh vegetables. So this will unfold as the days go by. I think it comes back to the point in terms of getting this deal sorted out. If there is a deal, of course, then there will be more goodwill on both sides to just put in place the easements that might help that traffic over the course of the first few weeks of next year.